William Byron wins his second straight Daytona 500. Jimmy Johnson gets a top 3 finish. And is there trouble at Team Trackhouse after Pitbull announces he's leaving the company? We'll talk about that and much more on this week's episode of Mondays with Morgan.
Where do you go? Larson up top, all the way up top. Busher, he's on the outside. He's in position. He's got it.
Jimmy Johnson through 3 and 4. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
It's been a busy week in the NASCAR world with the Daytona 500, and we got a jam-packed show for you today. And no better place to start than with the winner of the 2025 Daytona 500. William Byron gets the win after a massive last-lap crash involving Cole Custer, Austin Cindric, and Denny Hamlin. Byron squeaks by, gets his second straight 500. He joins Denny Hamlin as the only 2 drivers this century with back-to-back Daytona 500s. Denny Hamlin got his in 2019 and 2020. William Byron wasn't really up at the front much. He tried to get up there late in the going, but then got behind Bubba Wallace. And Bubba Wallace couldn't take a push to save his life. Same with Christopher Bell. None of these Toyotas could take a push all day long. So that kind of set William Byron back in the field. Then we had the crazy wrecks towards the end of the race. And then William Byron was able to squeak through on the last lap and win this thing. While Byron was kind of stuck in traffic all day, it was a total Team Penske domination. Joey Logano won Stage 1, then had engine issues, was able to rebound from that. Meanwhile, Ryan Blaney and Austin Cindric dominated Stage 2, and they were dominating Stage 3 up until the Ricky Stenhouse-Joey Logano crash. What I will say on that one is I think both drivers have a part to play in that. Depending on the replay, Joey Logano has a hole in some replays. Joey Logano doesn't have a hole in other replays. So that's really where it becomes a 50-50, which is why I'm not going to fully put it on Logano. But I'm also not going to say, Stenhouse came down on him. Stenhouse was trying to block this. It's within 15 to go with the 500. Stenhouse is going to do whatever he can to win. He knows this is his only real shot to win and get into the playoffs or at these super speedways. So I'm not going to fault him for trying to go for it. But once that wreck happened, Team Penske's power completely went away. We had seen all race long that when the Team Penske cars get hooked up, they were impossible to pass. It was like a brick wall they had built on the back of one of those cars. Because once they got hooked up and they were up at the front, there was no passing them. They controlled this race for much of it, and it wasn't until they started getting wrecked out that their power became limited. On the note of notable wrecks, let's talk about the Ryan Preece wheelie into flip into the outside wall. That was horrifying to watch. That is probably one of the craziest wrecks I have seen in my 20 years. And Ryan Preece's other one in 2023 is right up there too. I know everyone has kind of been talking about how do you keep these cars from flipping, especially at these super speedways. I don't know if there is a real cure. We've seen these cars flipping since the start of NASCAR. So I don't really know if there's ever going to be a cure, nor is there ever really going to be a notable cause. I mean, I know everyone wants to blame the underbody right now, but we've had cars without underbodies, and these cars still flip. So I think it's really going to come down to the horsepower, but you can't take that away. This is what makes Daytona Daytona. I understand it's terrifying, and it's scary to watch, and Ryan Preece has every right to be upset with what happened. But this is Daytona. This is what we have signed up for. And I don't know if there's a way to go away from this. You're going to have to take all the speed out of these cars, and we're already upset that they've taken out as much speed as they have. So if you take any more away, I mean, at this point, why not just put street cars out there? So I don't really know what you do. I think right now NASCAR is going to look at it, and they're going to come up with a solution, and we'll probably hear about it before Talladega, what they've come up with. I think it's too late to try and make any changes for Atlanta. But we'll have to see. I'm no expert in the aerospace. I'm not going to tell NASCAR, oh, you should try this, you should try that. I will ask the question, can you add grooves to the underbody to kind of help shoot the air out of the car faster rather than have it all go straight out the back? That's what I'm going to say on that one. But let's get back to the winner of the Daytona 500, William Byron. We'll pull up the results right here. William Byron wins it. Tyler Reddick second. Jimmy Johnson gets a top 3. That is awesome to see. I know I said in my video going into the 500 he wasn't going to win. He didn't have a chance to win. And, these are times where as a Jimmy Johnson fan, I'm glad I was wrong. Jimmy Johnson snuck by. He hung out at the back all day long. This felt like a traditional Jimmy Johnson super speedway kind of race. He hung out at the back all day long, waited for the big wrecks to happen, and then found his way up at the front and got a good finish. So I'm really glad to see that Jimmy Johnson gets a top 3. I doubted him at the super speedways, but he has now proven that he can get it done at a super speedway. He can survive the carnage. So maybe he's starting to learn this next-gen car. And where's he racing next? The Coca-Cola 600. He's a 4-time winner there. Not going to predict him to win the Coke 600 just yet. But there is definitely a lot more hope for the Coke 600 than I initially thought. Chase Briscoe gets 4th. John Hunter Nemechek 5th. Great day overall for Legacy Motor Club. They got all 3 of their cars in the top 12. Followed by Alex Bowman. Ryan Blaney rebounds for 7th. Same with Austin Cindric in 8th. Justin Allgaier and Junior Motorsports get a top 10 finish in their debut race. Good for them. That was awesome to see. That entire endeavor was just an awesome part of the weekend. Glad they got to be part of the big show. Chris Buescher comes home top 10. Michael McDowell 11th. He also had the fastest lap, which I do wish that Fox would do a better job of trying to track who gets that point. I think that just has to be something now. There's no reason not to. Formula One keeps track of it, so there definitely is the technology to make sure we know who actually has the fastest lap. That's my only real gripe with the broadcast. Show us who has the fastest lap, please. Just be really helpful for us who really, really want to know every minute detail of this race. Daniel Suarez gets 13th. Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon's Speed Weeks is completely underrated. He qualified really well on pole qualifying day, showed up at his duel, was competitive, wasn't truly competitive in the race, kind of just got lucky here with all these crashes, but you know what? 14th is 14th at the end of the day. Good job to Ty Dillon. I know I've been hard on him all off season, but this is a really good start for him. Hopefully he can get more finishes like this throughout the year. Chase Elliott gets a top 15, Ty Gibbs 16th, Riley Herbst 17th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 18th, Justin Haley 19th, Kyle Larson survives enough of the mayhem to get a top 20. That's really awesome to see. But now I want to move on to a couple discussions here to have. Does winning the Daytona 500 give William Byron an advantage going into the rest of the season? Absolutely it does. It locks him into the playoffs. We've seen this team be really good at the start of the year. Atlanta's next week. He's got to win there. And he's won at Phoenix before. This team could easily rattle off 3 or 4 wins coming up in the first 10 weeks of the year. I know I had William Byron missing the championship for my prediction, but right now, he's probably 5th on that list right now. I also think we've slightly underrated William Byron on this kind of super speedway racing. He has got 2 Daytona 500 wins. He has a summer Daytona win back in 2020. He's got a win at the Atlanta configuration. There is a real argument right now to be made that William Byron is the best super speedway racer in the next-gen era. I know a lot of people want to point at Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, but they don't have the wins that William Byron does. I understand William Byron didn't run up front all day long, but in the other races he's won, he has been a front runner. This is kind of the outlier of what we expect from William Byron. If I were to make a list right now of the best super speedway racers in the Cup Series in the next-gen era, I would probably have to say top 3, William Byron, number 2, Joey Logano, number 3, I'll give it Austin Cindric. I think he's that good. Ryan Blaney's probably 4th. Denny Hamlin is more than likely 5th on that list. But yeah, I think William Byron probably the best super speedway racer, and we're just not giving him the flowers he deserves right now. Now, let's look at the biggest surprises from the Daytona 500 weekend, and I think this guy's got to get it first. Corey LaJoie. What in the world, Rick Ware Racing, did you put in that car? Corey LaJoie was arguably the coolest part of the weekend in terms of open cars. And there was Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s team in this race. And I think Corey LaJoie outran them both the entire race. He was up at the front. He kind of faded towards the end of the stages, but that was planned, they said. And he was running for the win towards the end before all the crashing happened. I gotta say, I know we've been dogging on him all off season because of the way 2024 went, But Corey LaJoie is still a solid driver, and if you're a team that's looking to take a chance for 2026, I think Corey LaJoie probably goes in as one of the best free agents right now going into 2026. I know we've got guys like Kyle Busch, William Byron's yet to re-sign, but I think of the guys who aren't in the Cup Series full-time right now, Corey LaJoie is probably number one on that free agent list right now. I mentioned Jimmie Johnson before. Great to see him. A couple of the ones that were kind of just shocking, but I guess weren't really shocking considering how qualifying went, was how bad Toyota was this entire race. I mentioned it before, but Toyota couldn't take a push to save their life. Bubba Wallace was leading the Hendrick cars at one point, and they just fell straight to the back. Christopher Bell was incredibly loose. That ultimately got him turned and caused one of the big crashes towards the end of the race there. At this point, I don't know why anyone tries to go for pole qualifying. You're basically just setting yourself up not to win the 500. There's basically a huge trade-off right now. We're seeing you're either really good at qualifying and bad in the race, or really bad at qualifying and good in the race. I think at this point, we shouldn't be attempting to win the pole for the Daytona 500. Track position is not necessary at the 500. We all know that. Not until at least late in the race. So I would be shocked if 2026 you see much of anything from one manufacturer. If I'm a manufacturer, I'm saying we are not putting any effort into winning the pole for the 500. Winning the pole is great, and it gets you TV time in the pre-race show. But outside of that, it doesn't get you that much closer to the Harley J. Earl Trophy. I want to quickly wrap this conversation up before we go into my overall thoughts by talking about the cautions and the caution controversy that's currently going on. When should NASCAR throw the caution? When shouldn't they? This stems from Thursday night when they threw the caution while all the cars were wrecking on the front stretch coming to the checkered. Meanwhile, in the 500, they chose not to throw the caution while everyone wrecked out in turn 3. I don't know how NASCAR can win in that situation. We complained on Thursday that they threw the caution, and then we complained when they didn't throw the caution in the 500. I understand that there's two very different scenarios. One is in turn 3, one is on the front stretch. But, I mean, we would be still angry if NASCAR threw the yellow, I feel like. We wouldn't be like, oh, why didn't we let him race back? I mean, Tyler Reddick had a run on William Byron there through turn 3. He could have made a pass had he been any closer. Jimmie Johnson could have gotten there had they gotten side by side. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could have happened there, and we all would have been upset about what could have been. I mean, if that caution comes out, Jimmie Johnson probably doesn't get a top 3 finish, if I'm being honest. William Byron maybe doesn't win the 500, all depending on when they push that button. I think those wrecked cars are probably still in front of him at that time. So, I mean, you probably have a wrecked winner. I don't really know what NASCAR can do in that situation. I think they're just kind of in a lose-lose. There's going to be those who are angry. There's going to be those who are happy. You just can't win with that one. I don't hate that they didn't throw the caution. I think it was fine. But I do think they need to come up with a way that they're going to be able to explain it to everyone. To wrap it up with the 500, race was pretty solid for the most part. I know Team Penske kind of boarded up by dominating the entire up until 15 to go, basically. But, I mean, the racing was pretty entertaining the whole time. They were trying to get 3 wide. It didn't really work. They were side by side. No one really got into a freight train line, especially even when the fuel conservation was a problem in stage 2. You didn't really see that happening. As I said before, Fox just needs to do a better job of showing us who has the fastest lap. I think for the most part, they were pretty good. I know a lot of people don't like the Fox broadcast. I kind of have a soft spot towards Fox. I know they could do better. But, I mean, at this point, it's Fox. But overall, I thought they did a pretty good job. In the end, I'm going to give this race an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really good. You had the crashes that Daytona's known for. You had the side-by-side racing. It didn't completely devolve like a lot of people thought it might. I know some people said it became a crash fest at the end. But it's the Daytona 500. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and ride at the end? No, you're going to try and go out there and win the 500. I don't care who you are. I don't care what team you're with. You are going to try and win the Daytona 500 if you even have a slimmer of hope that you could make a pass. So 8 out of 10, that's my final rating. Let me know down in the comments section what you would rate this Daytona 500. Moving on from the race, though, we got a couple of big stories that broke throughout the weekend. Let's start with the one that has the most truth to it, and that's Pitbull has announced he is leaving Trackhouse Racing effective immediately. He posted on X that he was done with the team. I know a lot of people are freaking out about this one. Oh, what's happening at Trackhouse? Why is Pitbull leaving? It looks like this one is purely a business decision and not a performance decision. I mean, Ross Chastain won, Daniel Suarez won. They have won every year of the next-gen car, so it's not like they're running 35th every week out of nowhere. I also don't think this is nearly as big of a loss as people are making it seem. I mean, how much of the on-track performance is being affected by Pitbull being there? I think he was there to drum up sponsorship. I think he was there to drum up exposure for Trackhouse. I mean, they made a whole album for Pitbull labeled Trackhouse. So I think a lot of it was brand exposure. I think the bigger loss happened earlier on, was Ty Norris leaving in 2024 for Colleague. That to me is the bigger tell and the bigger concern, that not everything is as peachy as Justin Marks wants to make it seem. The big question is, why is everyone leaving Trackhouse? But I don't think Pitbull leaving is going to affect their on-track performance. I think if anything, they probably have a tougher time getting sponsorship. But I mean, it's tough sledding for whoever you are. I do think Justin Marks will find a new partner pretty quickly. I mean, there's lots of people trying to get into NASCAR right now. Maybe this opens up the door for Dale Earnhardt Jr. to come in. We know he doesn't want to take on the full risks of owning a charter, so maybe he partners up with Trackhouse. I mean, they already have the partnership in the Xfinity Series with Connor Zilisch. The problem is right now, Trackhouse is full. So if Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to come in, is he happy with a 3-car roster of Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and Shane Van Gisbergen? This kind of stokes the fuel that Daniel Suarez isn't going to be back at Trackhouse. And I mean, if Justin Marks has someone like Dale Jr. come in, chances are Dale Jr. is going to want to put someone like Justin Allgaier, like a Carson Kvapil. I know Connor Zilisch is probably at the top of the list, but if he doesn't perform in the Xfinity Series and Carson Kvapil goes out there and just lights the world on fire, maybe there's a debate to be had? I don't know. That's just speculation at this point. Speaking of speculation, NASCAR continues to tell us they're going to have a new OEM. And this weekend, the story got even crazier when Chris Knight reported that Dodge could be coming back in 2026 in the Craftsman Truck Series. There was also a report I saw saying 2028 they could come back for the Cup Series. I think the search for NASCAR's 4th OEM kind of has to go this way. I don't think you're going to see one OEM just plunge right in and get all 3 series, the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series going all at once. I think it's smart to kind of dip your toe in, start at the truck level, get a team going there, then find someone in the Xfinity Series, then get a Cup team going, or you get the Xfinity and Cup guy all at once if you get one team like that. But I do think that the OEM search becomes a lot easier once you get a 4th OEM. I think once NASCAR can establish who the 4th OEM is, it's going to be a lot easier to get a 5th, a 6th, maybe a 7th. I don't know how many OEMs they could get, but I think every manufacturer that we've heard of is waiting right now to see what happens to the first one who takes the plunge. If Dodge is the first one and they have success right away, I think that opens up the door for Honda to say, hey, Dodge did it. They had a quick success. Let's jump right in right now. I think you can easily get a 5th OEM once you get the 4th one. And if the 4th one goes really well, it's going to make this process a lot faster. I think this is the smart move if Dodge is going to do this, and I think it makes the path for NASCAR to get more than 4 OEMs a lot easier than it currently is for them to go from 3 to 4 OEMs. But let me know down in the comments section below, do you think NASCAR is as close to getting a 4th OEM as they keep telling us? I also want to hear what you think about Pitbull leaving Trackhouse. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is Daniel Suarez that much on the hot seat now that Pitbull is out? I also want to hear your opinions on everything that we talked about in around the Daytona 500. That'll do it for this week's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in to episode 2 of Mondays with Morgan. We'll be back next week after the Atlanta race. Got a couple of preview content coming up, including my updated power rankings. Make sure you stick around for that. Until next time, though, I'm Morgan Weeb. Have a good day, everyone.
Go. Larson up top, all the way up top. Busher, he's on the outside. He's in position. He's got it.
Jimmy Johnson through 3 and 4. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt.